Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 75b, top of the page, with the words Ella Lav Ha Kamash Balan. Rather, is it not correct to say that by citing the more complicated case, this is what the Mishnah teaches us? It is only in this case where it is established that the thief stole an animal based on the testimony of two witnesses, and it is established that he slaughtered or sold it based on the testimony of one witness, or based on his own admission, and where he does not obligate himself through his admission to pay the principal, that he is obligated to pay the fine. The Gemara elaborates. In other words, it is only in that case where the theft is established based on the testimony of two witnesses that we say that liability based on his own admission is similar to the testimony of one witness. In that, just as when the slaughter is established based on the testimony of one witness, if one other witness later comes, he joins together with the first witness, and together their testimony is rendered a valid testimony of two witnesses, and the thief becomes liable to pay. So too in a case when the slaughter is established based on his own admission, if witnesses subsequently come and testify, he becomes liable to pay the fine, as his admission would not have rendered him liable to pay any payment. But if it is established that the thief stole an animal and slaughtered or sold it, all based on the testimony of one witness, or based on his own admission, in which case, through his admission, he obligates himself to pay the principal amount, we do not say that when witnesses testify subsequent to his own admission, it is similar to when they arrive subsequent to the testimony of one witness, and he is liable to pay the fine in both cases. Rather, since in this case his admission would have rendered him liable to pay the principal due to the fact that the theft was not established based on the testimony of two witnesses, it is considered a proper admission, which exempts him from paying the fine. The Braita that supports Rav Hamnuna's opinion is the one cited earlier, as it is taught if a thief saw witnesses who were approaching with the intent to testify against him, and at that point he said, I admit that I stole the animal, but I did not slaughter or sell it, he pays only the principal. Why do I need the Braita to teach, and the thief said, I admit that I stole an animal, but I did not slaughter or sell it? Let it teach a simpler case in which the thief said either I stole the animal, or I slaughtered it, or I sold it. Rather, by choosing the more complicated case, this is what the Braita teaches us. The only reason that the thief is exempt from payment is that he says, I stole the animal, as in the case that he obligated himself to pay the principal. But if he says, I did not steal, and witnesses came and testified that he did steal an animal, and subsequently he changed his claim and says, I slaughtered it or I sold it, and then witnesses came and confirmed that he slaughtered or sold it, in which case the thief did not obligate himself to pay the principal or any other payment, he would be liable to pay the fourfold or fivefold payment. Apparently, an admission to the slaughter of a stolen animal is not considered a valid admission. As such, an admission does not obligate the perpetrator to pay a fine. The Gemara says, in rejection of this second proof, no. It is possible to explain the reason of the Tana of the Braita chose to present this case in a different manner, as it teaches us this halach itself, that once the thief says, I stole the animal, even if he also says, I did not slaughter or sell it, and later witnesses came and testified that he slaughtered or sold it, he is exempt from paying the fourfold or fivefold payment. What is the reason for this exemption? The reason is that The Merciful One states in the Torah that there is a payment of 4 sheep for a sheep and 5 oxen for an ox. See Exodus 21:37. This indicates that a thief can be rendered liable to pay, respectively, a 4-fold or a 5-fold payment, but not a 4-fold or 5-fold payment for an ox, nor a 3-fold payment for a sheep. In other words, one should not view the fines as independent of each other, that if the thief is found with the animal, he pays as a fine the double payment, and if he slaughtered or sold it, he pays a different fine. In other words, the 4-fold or 5-fold payment. Rather, the 4-fold or 5-fold payment comprises the principal, the double payment, and an additional 2 or 3 times the principal. By admitting to this act of theft, the thief exempts himself from the double payment, and the remaining fine for slaughtering a sheep would be a 3-fold payment or a 4-fold payment for an ox, which are not mandated by the Torah. The Gemara proposes, let us say, that the opinion of Rabbi Hamnuna and Rabbi Yochanan is the subject of a dispute between Tanaim. As it is taught in the Braita, if 2 witnesses testify that someone stole an animal and 2 others testify against him that he slaughtered or sold the animal, and the witnesses who had testified concerning the theft were rendered conspiring witnesses, the thief is exempt from all payment, as testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalidated. If the testimony concerning the theft was undermined, the testimony concerning the slaughter or sale is thereby rendered irrelevant. Consequently, the alleged thief is exempt from any payment. If the witnesses who testified concerning the slaughter or sale were rendered conspiring witnesses, but the testimony concerning the theft remains credible, the thief pays a double payment, and the conspiring witnesses pay a 3-fold payment, as that is the loss they sought to impose on the thief. The sages said in the name of Sumchus, the witnesses pay the double payment, and the thief pays a 3-fold payment for an ox and a 2-fold payment for a ram. This concludes the Braita. The Gemara analyzes the statement of Sumchus. To which clause in the Braita is Sumchus referring? Ahai koi Sumchus. If we say that he is referring to the first clause in which the testimony concerning the theft is invalidated, this is impossible. Doesn't Sumchus accept the principle that testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalidated? In this case, rendering the testimony concerning the slaughter or sale irrelevant if there is no testimony concerning the theft. Rather, he must be referring to the latter clause of the Braita, in which the testimony concerning the slaughter of the sale is invalidated. This too is impossible, as in the case of the rabbis. That is, the first Tana of the Braita say, well, in other words, that what they state is reasonable, and the thief pays the double payment, and the witnesses pay a 3-fold payment. On what basis would Sumchus dispute this ruling? Rather, it must be that Sumchus is referring to a different case entirely, one that is not mentioned explicitly in the Braita, and a different matter at the core of the dispute between them. Sumchus is referring to a case where 2 people come and say to the thief, "You stole an animal," and the thief said to him in reply, "Yes, I did steal the animal, and moreover, I slaughtered it or I sold it, but I did not steal it in your presence, and your testimony that you saw me steal it is still false. Steal it is false." And subsequently, the thief brought new witnesses who rendered the original witnesses conspiring witnesses by testifying that they were in a different place at the time they claimed that the theft occurred, whereby proving that the thief did not steal in their presence. And finally, the owner of the animal brought other witnesses to testify that the other's thief stole the animal and slaughtered it or sold it. And Sumchus and the rabbis disagree over whether an admission to the slaughter of a stolen animal is a valid admission. Even if it does not lead to liability to pay any payment, both parties to dispute agree. Both parties to the dispute agree that the admission of a perpetrator, not only in response to the testimony of witnesses, is not a valid admission. The dispute between them is that the rabbis maintain that even though the thief's admission concerning the theft itself is not a valid admission because it is due only to the witnesses who have testified against him that he admits his guilt. Nevertheless, his admission concerning the slaughter of the animal is a valid admission, despite the fact that it does not render the thief liable to pay a fine, and he is therefore exempt from the fourfold or fivefold payment. The conspiring witnesses must pay the double payment to the thief, since this is the amount of financial damage they sought to impose upon him. It's kasher zavam. While the thief pays the double payment to the owners, as valid witnesses ultimately testified that he stole the animal. And Sumchus maintains that since the admission concerning the theft itself is not a valid admission because it was due only to the testimony of the witnesses that he admits his guilt. So too, the admission concerning the slaughter is not valid admission because it does not obligate him to pay a fine, as it is stated by Rav Hamnuna and Rabbi Yochanan. And consequently, the first two witnesses to the theft who were rendered conspiring witnesses pay the double payment, as that is the amount of a financial damage they sought to impose upon him. And the thief pays the double payment to the power of the animal, double payment to the owner. I don't get power from the owner of the animal, as valid witnesses ultimately testify that he stole it. And since his admission is invalid, he must pay an additional threefold payment for a total of fivefold payment for an ox and twofold payment for a total of fourfold payment for a ram. If this is their dispute, Sumchus is in agreement with the opinion of Rav Hamnuna and Rabbi Yochanan, while the rabbis disagree with this opinion. Rav Acha, the son of Iga, said no, it is possible to explain the Braita differently, as follows. Everyone, that is both Sumchus and the rabbis, maintain that an admission concerning the slaughter of a stolen animal is not valid. It's not. Where was I? Anyway, both Sumchus and the rabbis maintain that an admission concerning the slaughter of a stolen animal is not a valid admission, as it does not render the perpetrator liable to pay any payment. Rather, they disagree over the concept of testimony that you cannot render conspiratory testimony. Sumchus and the rabbis disagree with regard to a case where witnesses come and say to the thief, "You stole an animal," and the thief said in response, "I did not steal an animal, and moreover I slaughtered it. Or I sold it, but you are false witnesses, as it was not in your presence that I stole the animal, but it is in the presence of so-and-so and so-and-so." And the thief subsequently brought witnesses who established the first set of witnesses, of conspiring witnesses, by testifying that the thief did not steal the animal in their presence. And finally, so-and-so and so-and-so, the two people maintained in the kitchen, came into the fight against the thief, saying that the thief stole the animal and so slaughtered it or sold it. New Mishnah. Are we doing on time here? Whoa. I think we'll do part 3 here. Just for the... It's a new Mishnah.